Hey guys, Cringle here. Today I'm going to show you some of my tips and tricks on restringing a pre-lit Christmas tree. I want to start out with some of the tools that you may need depending on the type of tree you have and how the lights were originally put on. Needle nose pliers, many different kinds, simple, works just as good. They're great for if your tree has these little green clips, these little C clips, which can often be a huge pain of trying to remove them. But this, just a simple pliers, makes it very, very easy, which I will show you later. Also, any type of wire cutter or a little snip is great for zip ties or cable ties, which can often be found on Christmas trees. So those are some of the tools that you will probably find very helpful. And I'm going to also show you just how to make some notes of how many lights are on your tree as you go, which in the long run will save you a lot of headache. So as you work on your tree and start removing the lights, you want to make a tree and you want to determine each row of branches. Okay, so if you're going from the base up, you have one circular row of 10 limbs, say. Okay, so I like to mark on here how many branches there are in this row. Okay, and then you want to note how many lights are on each branch. So let's just say that there's, on a bottom row, sometimes you might find anywhere between 7 and 15, depending on how slim or how wide your tree is. So in this case, we're just going to say that it has 10 lights per branch, per limb, okay? So then this row would have 100 lights just on that row. As you go up, as your tree gets smaller in diameter, you'll be seeing less lights per branch, because obviously the branch is getting shorter and there's less space for lights. So you want to record that as you go, because that will make it far easier when you're putting the lights back on. That way you're not putting, 15 lights per branch down here, and you get up here and you're starting to run out of lights, or you're using a lot of lights, which if you want to put more lights on in your tree, you're more than welcome to. But if if you like how it looked before and you want to maintain that, you definitely want to write down what you find, and that way you maintain the same look and the same feel and the same glow that your tree had prior to replacing the lights. So that's just a general thing. I like to go up, and I also like to mark where my sections are. Oftentimes a tree will have 3 sections: your bottom, your middle, and your top. Oftentimes your middle and your bottom might have the same amount of lights, but your bottom might seem a little shorter, but it's also wider. Your top section oftentimes can be some of the trickiest because you don't have, say, designated branches, and it's not usually a hinged construction, so that can have some of its own little quirks to it. But oftentimes that little top piece will have anywhere between 100 to 150, sometimes 200 lights, depending on how many lights your tree originally had. So that can be a gauge, and you can mess around with that when you're determining how many lights you need. A general rule of thumb when you're replacing lights on a pre-lit tree is every vertical foot. So, if your tree is, 7 feet tall, it's a general rule that you would need 100 lights per vertical foot. So we're 7 vertical feet tall. General rule of thumb, to make it look full, make it look nice, you would need 700 lights. Okay, so of course some trees have less, some trees have more. So recording it definitely helps determine how many lights your tree originally had. So next we will show you how I take off the lights and how I put the lights back on. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to remove the lights from your tree. First, you want to set up your tree in its stand. You want to not have it totally screwed in, that way you can still move it, which comes in handy if you're sitting on a stool, and that way you can access most of the bottom of the tree without a whole lot of effort. Just makes it a whole lot quicker. So your branch that you're working on, I like to sometimes push the upper branches up. Just gives me a little bit more space to work with. And like we talked earlier, some of the trees might have the cable ties or these clips. Oftentimes you'll find the cable ties where the lights first start on a branch, and you'll find the clips behind each light on each branch. So those tools that we were talking about earlier, when that's on your branch, your little pliers, needle nose pliers, is great because you can, let me zoom in here and I'll show you. Taking the back of the clip, you are going to twist. So not that open end of the clip, but that U-shaped back. You're going to just take your pliers and you're just going to grab the back of that and twist. And it'll pop right off. Oftentimes they'll be a little bit more brittle and they'll break off, but just a nice grab and twist and it's off. As far as the cable ties, as you might be able to understand, when that's on, it's as simple as cutting it off with those wire cutters that we talked about earlier. Just snipping it, and that's off. So that's some quick techniques with the tools that we had talked about earlier, and makes it a whole lot easier. So finding an end, in this particular case we want to go on this side. I like to unwrap the lights, that way I know that I have all the lights off the tree. When you start cutting, you know, this one and this one and this one off, you'll still have wires left over, and you'll be finding wires for the next several years. So over here, as you can see, everything's usually wrapped in the same direction. So we want to reverse that direction by just unwrapping. Okay, you can push your back branches back because there's no lights on these here. So going around that branch, and here we're on another limb, another piece, unwrapping there. So it's just basically an unwrapping. Once you find the one side that will keep it unwrapped, and you're working backwards against the original wrapping, it's not that difficult. Just keep unwrapping. Again, pushing back sort of what you have already done, keeping it out of the way. Sometimes you'll be unwrapping around your branch, the whole thing. You just want to keep going. Under. So each tree is a little different, but generally it's the same principle. So you're basically just following that wire and finding where it was wrapped next. Just like that. That branch now has no lights on it. So now we're going to show you how to put the lights back on. When you get the lights from us, which we carry a good selection of wire colors and sizes, but you want a 6-inch It's a commercial grade 6-inch light. So this is how you would get it when you get it from us. It's in a bulk packaging, just a poly bag. You want to open that up. What's in there is often will be some spare bulbs. You want to collect them as you are restringing, because those bases will definitely fit in here, so you won't have to replace, pull the glass bulb out of the packaging and out of the base to replace it, like we've mentioned in some of our other videos. So keep them aside. I always like to test the lights before I start stringing. That way I know that they are functioning. We always test our lights before we ship them out to you, but things do happen. So making sure that they light, and they do. So we are good with this set. I'll keep them turned on so you can see what I'm doing here. And we're still looking at that branch that we had removed the lights earlier. Sometimes you want to start at the end. I always try and untwist the lights before I get too far. It just gives me some uncoiled wire to work with here. So starting with the side that you end it with, or you can start on the other end. As long as you start on one side and you're consistent with what side you start with on each branch throughout the tree, that'll make it go smoother. And if you ever have to replace them again, it's easier to take them off. So these commercial or 6-inch space cords, as you can see, has a short wire between the plug and the first bulb. Now, your tree may have had a much longer. It could have been a foot, it could have been 2 feet. Most of the lights that were on the tree originally can often be made for that tree. So the length of that wire between the bulb, first bulb, and the plug or the lead wire can vary greatly. So I will, if I need 3 feet, 2 feet, I'll use the length of the cord, whether there's lights on it or not, and that will just suffice, because you definitely want to get your plug to reach your outlet, or your outlet on your extension cord, wherever it may be on your tree in that section. So you want to make sure too that you're rewiring a tree or putting the lights back on the individual sections, that you're not taking lights, stringing here and then into that second or that middle section that we talked about earlier, because then you won't be able to take it apart easily. You can take it apart, but they'll still be connected, and it'll be challenging to get it out of your basement or out of your attic. So going back to that branch that we had, I oftentimes shape the tree as I go, because then I can see how it would look, where I want my lights put. Oftentimes you're going around the edge of the branches, and so I like to start in the back. Let's see if you can see what I want you to see. So we'll give myself a little bit of space here on this plug. So I'm starting here and I'm wrapping around, sort of having the light, the single bulb is sort of on the end. Okay, bringing the cord back down a little bit. I'm kind of going to that next branch. Okay, wrapping it around a little bit. And here I went. I was going in the wrong direction on that wire. Let's try this way. Wrapping it there. That's where that bigger spacing comes in handy when you're jumping from limb to limb, and also when you're wrapping, because that will eat up some of your wire. Okay, so wrap around there. Sort of jump to the front here. See there, I was spinning the tree. Makes it a whole lot easier just to get around it. And there we can put, you know, as many lights on as we want. You could put lights on each of these branches if you wanted to. So then from there, then I will jump over to my other limb. But basically that's that limb restrung. Now I normally do not use clips. I don't use zip ties when I put them back on, because it's a good chance that I will be taking them back off again to replace them. Because oftentimes your tree will last much longer than 2 or 3 sets, or 2 or 3, you know, sets or cycles of lights. So that is basically that branch. Now, if you're worried about the top, you can still, sometimes you'll find another light bulb in the front top, but oftentimes the top and the back, when you have another branch put down here, you don't see it that often. And even comparing it to one of these original ones, let's look at it here. When it's shaped, you have, out here we have a little bit more in the front than what I had put on, then that's easy enough to change. So I'll show you here. We'll just go back. And if you wrap it right, you can sometimes just almost pull it straight off. Okay? So we're going to go back to the front here. And we'll go up into the top here a little bit. Okay? So I sort of work up, work down. We'll grab this one here. Go back up a little bit. And now I'll go back to this back end. And there. We have a few more lights on that branch. And there, that mistake that I made, if I had recorded how many lights I had on that branch originally, I could be counting as I go and say, okay, I need one more light on here. I'll stick one more up in this front. So there again, once the limbs are down, you don't have to worry about the back so much because you're basically seeing the front. Really, the only time that you're going towards the back is so that you have a shorter space between branches when you're jumping your branch. So when you're wiring here, you can quickly jump over to this next branch without wasting a bulb or wasting wire. And then you can move on to your next limb. So that's a general rule. Again, it helps when you remove all the wires. You can do it layer by layer or row by row if you want. That way you can compare how the manufacturer had it on to compare to how you're doing it. Now, comparing the manufacturing cord, they have a much greater spacing between their bulbs. Sometimes it'll be 8, I've seen as much as 12 inches between their bulbs. And I can order in 8-inch spacing, but it's much, much harder to come by. And I found that the 6-inch spacing can be just as effective. Oftentimes when they have the larger spacing, they're wrapping around the limb multiple times, sometimes just to use up that extra wire. So it sort of works. It's a nice median between the normal 2.5, 3-inch spacing that you just buy from the box stores or some of the regular sets that we have, compared to this commercial grade or the 6-inch spacing, which has a greater spacing, but yet not too much that you don't have a whole lot of extra wire showing on your branches. So that's a general, very general example of how I Some quick tips then on how to extend the longevity of your tree and of the lights on your tree, because let's face it, you probably don't want to do this again in the near future. So whenever you see a burnt out bulb, burnt out light bulb, you want to replace that bulb as soon as possible. The sets that you would purchase from us are wired. If one burns out, the rest remain lit. But the problem is when multiple bulbs burn out, or when each bulb burns out, the set has to pump more electricity through the set to bypass that burnt out bulb. So every burnt out bulb, the more electricity that's pumping through, trying to get through that blockage. So enough bulbs burn out, and there's a risk of overheating, which then that section or that circuit will shut off. When you have a 100 count light set, half of it goes out, the other half stays lit. That half, or those 50 bulbs, is one circuit. Identical situation that's on here. So if you have the Lightkeeper Pro, that little red tool, that little red gun-shaped thing, that is a great tool on identifying what bulb is burnt out in that section or that circuit when that turns off. We sell them in our online store. I highly recommend it. It's great for not only pre-lit trees, but for your regular strands, for wreaths, for pre-lit lawn ornaments, all sorts of things. It's well worth the investment. And I've had customers that have talked to us about restringing their tree, and when they use that gun, that tool, the Lightkeeper Pro, they've gotten as much as 10 years out of their lights. Anyone who has not heard of it or didn't maintain the tree and replace the burnt out bulbs got as little as 3 years before they started seeing issues with their lights. So it's very important, and a little bit goes a long way of just replacing some burnt out bulbs at the beginning of the season or as you see them throughout the season. Most of the trees use a 2.5 volt bulb. We stock those, and we stock them year round. We also have different colors in that same voltage if your tree has special lights on it, or if you special order solid colored string lights from us. So you can definitely do that. You can check out our video on how to replace those bulbs, but it is a huge and crucial point of extending the life of your lights on your tree. Rarely ever is it the fuse in these miniature lights. The larger C7s or C9s that would be like those old-fashioned bulbs that some of you might remember your parents or grandparents having. The fuses in those blew much more often. But in these miniature lights, I honestly have only ever seen 1 or 2 fuses blow in all the years that I've been doing this. So it's very, very unlikely, it's very uncommon. The most common and most likely thing is there's an issue with a bulb. Twisted, burnt out, broken, wires missing on the base. It's definitely the most likely culprit. As you store your tree, the most ideal way is to transport it in the individual sections, your bottom, middle, top. That just allows you to get through doorways without smushing it. The less crushing or folding and smashing of your tree, the longer your lights will last. So every time you smash, every time you would crush it to get it back into a box or get it through a doorway or something, you're stressing. You can stress the wires, you can stress where the wires go into the bottom of the bulb, which can go into all sorts of other issues that aren't really repairable. You would end up needing to replace that set. So the less that you can crush it, if you have an area in your basement or your attic that you can leave them somewhat assembled or fully assembled and put a blanket over it or one of those disposable tree removal bags. Those work great to help keep dust and dirt off of your tree in the off season. But any time that you can avoid, crushing it, they are hinged, so which is great for when you're moving it. But you really don't want to smush it back to the way it was when it came out of that box. You'll do more harm than good. Not everybody has that luxury. Some people will keep their box, and they will just lay the sections in there. It'll be overfilling, but it's not smushed. That can definitely help with keeping your lights going for as long as possible. You are welcome to purchase our lights from our website. We ship to every U.S. state. We offer combined shipping and expert advice if you need help. So you are more than welcome to check out our website, www.christopherkringles.com. Link is in the information below, and you can shop our great selection of lights for pre-lit trees and our lights for any other time of the year. Thanks for watching, and good luck with restringing your pre-lit tree.